The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was my daughter, Emma, sitting in a chair beside my hospital bed. She was holding a baby, tiny, wrapped in a pink blanket, her cheeks red from crying. Emma's eyes were swollen too, but her voice was steady when she leaned in and whispered, "Mom, I didn't let them take her. She's ours." For a second, I didn't understand. My head was foggy, my body numb. I could barely move, but then it hit me like a wave crashing over a cliff. This baby was mine, my daughter, and something had almost happened while I was unconscious. Something I hadn't agreed to, something I would never forgive. Hours earlier, before the lights and the anesthesia and the emergency C-section, I was sitting in that same hospital room, timing my contractions and trying to keep calm for Emma's sake. She was coloring in her sketchbook, drawing a picture of herself holding her baby sister. I smiled every time she looked up to show me her progress. She'd been so excited about the new baby. She talked to my belly every night like it was already a part of her world. She even picked out her name, Hope. But Adrian, my husband, hadn't said a word about names. He barely looked at me the entire drive to the hospital. He sat in the corner scrolling through his phone while I tried to breathe through the pain. When the nurse came in to check my vitals, he didn't even look up. His mom, Mara, arrived 10 minutes later and immediately took over the room like it belonged to her. She kissed Adrian, ignored me, and looked at my stomach with a frown. "Still sitting high," she muttered. "It might be another girl." I nodded politely. I'd learned to keep quiet around her. She never liked me. I was the woman who already had a child from a previous relationship. I wasn't what she imagined for her only son. She sat beside Adrian, whispering in his ear. He didn't argue. He never argued with her. Emma looked up from her drawing and smiled at them. "I'm going to teach her how to ride a bike," she said, "just like Daddy taught me." Mara didn't smile back. "We'll see what happens, sweetie," she said. My stomach twisted. I looked out the window to avoid showing my reaction. It was raining. Slow, steady drops that blurred the view. Everything felt heavy. The air, the silence, the space between me and my husband. The monitors started beeping faster. The nurse rushed in and checked my pressure. It was spiking. She paged the doctor. Within minutes, I was being prepped for emergency surgery. I barely had time to kiss Emma and tell her I'd be okay. Adrian followed me down the hall. He said nothing. Mara stayed behind with Emma. The last thing I remember was the blur of white lights above me and the sound of nurses talking fast, then black. When I woke up, everything was different. The air was still. The room was quiet, but there was this strange weight on my chest, not physical, emotional. Something was wrong. And then I saw Emma. She was holding the baby. My baby. She looked tired but proud. "I didn't let them take her," she repeated. I stayed the whole time, even when they said I couldn't. I tried to sit up, but the pain knocked the breath out of me. Emma looked down at the baby and kissed her forehead. "She cried when they touched her," she said. "She didn't want to go with them." Them. I looked around. Adrian wasn't in the room. Mara wasn't either. It was just me, Emma, and the baby. I reached out and touched her tiny hand. She grabbed my finger with so much strength I almost cried. "Why would someone try to take her?" I asked, my voice cracked and hoarse. Emma blinked back tears. "Dad said you didn't want her," she whispered. "Grandma told the nurse to give her away, but I knew they were lying." Everything inside me clenched. I looked at my baby again, then at my daughter. Emma stood her ground. She had sat in this room protecting her baby sister, while the people I trusted most tried to erase her. She didn't scream or run. She waited. She held her. She made sure when I woke up I wouldn't be alone. That's when I realized Emma saved her, and maybe me too. I wasn't supposed to get pregnant again. That's what the doctors told me after Emma was born. Emergency delivery, hemorrhaging, a long recovery. They warned me that another pregnancy might be risky. Adrian said he understood that one child was enough. And for a while, it was. Emma was everything. Bright, curious, stubborn like me. We built a little world together, just the two of us and enough love to fill the gaps left by everything we didn't have. Then I met Adrian at the community center. He was charming, confident, quick to smile. Emma liked him right away. He taught her how to ride a bike in the park, bought her books about stars and planets, called her Little Explorer. I fell for him fast. I thought I was lucky. We got married a year later. He said he wanted a big family. I told him the risks. He said he didn't care, that love was worth the gamble. At first, he meant it. But something changed when we found out I was pregnant again. He smiled when I told him, but it didn't reach his eyes. When we learned it was a girl, his mood shifted. He said all the right things, but there was a distance between us I couldn't name. At first, I told myself it was just nerves, but it grew heavier each week. Then Mara got involved. From the beginning, she didn't like me. She never said it outright, but it showed in the way she looked at Emma, the way she questioned every choice I made, from how I dressed to what I fed her son. Mara believed men should lead and women should follow. She believed in family legacies and the importance of sons. When she heard I was pregnant again, her reaction was cold and calculating. "If it's a boy, it'll stabilize things," she said one evening when she dropped by unannounced. "Your little family could use some structure." I didn't respond. I just smiled politely and offered her tea. I knew she wouldn't drink. Adrian started working longer hours. When he came home, he didn't ask how I was feeling or how Emma's school project was going. He barely looked up from his phone. At night, he rolled away from me in bed. One night, I caught part of a phone call. He was in the kitchen, speaking low. I only heard a few words. "I'm not raising another girl." The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. Emma asked him to help her with her science project. He told her he was too tired. I wanted to believe he was just stressed, but there was a knot in my stomach that tightened every time he walked into the room. I started sleeping with one hand on my belly. As my due date approached, I tried to keep things normal for Emma. We watched movies together. We baked cookies. She would talk to the baby through my belly, telling her secrets, asking if she liked dinosaurs or princesses more. She named her Hope without even asking me. "Because she's our hope," she said proudly, "for everything." I cried in the kitchen that night when she went to bed. I hadn't felt hope in weeks. 2 days before my due date, I started having pains. I ignored them at first. They were mild, and I didn't want to make a fuss. But by morning, I was on the floor of the bathroom, clutching the sink. Adrian drove me to the hospital without speaking. Emma sat in the back seat, holding my hand from behind. At the hospital, they ran tests and hooked me up to machines. A nurse came in and said the baby was in distress. I was already dilated, but the baby's position was off. They recommended an emergency C-section. There wasn't time to wait. I turned to Adrian. He nodded, eyes on his phone. Emma tugged on my gown. "Will it hurt?" she asked. "Not for long," I said. "I'll be back soon." Gave me a form to sign. My hands were shaking. They took off my wedding ring and necklace before surgery. Emma hugged me tightly before the nurse wheeled me away. "I'll take care of her," she whispered. "You just rest." Those were the last words I heard before I went under. In the hallway, as I was being pushed toward the operating room, I saw Mara. She didn't say a word. She just stared, her lips tight, her arms folded. I locked eyes with her for 1 second. Then she turned and walked into the waiting room. That image stayed with me as everything faded. The sterile lights, the clipped voices, the chill that crawled over my skin. My last thought wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was Emma, not Adrian, not Mara, just Emma. Because somewhere deep down, I already knew she would be the one to hold the line when I couldn't. And without her, I wouldn't wake up to the baby I had risked everything to bring into the world. I woke up once during the surgery. Just for a second. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The lights above me were cold and blinding. I felt pressure in my stomach, heard distant voices, and then darkness swallowed everything again. While I was unconscious, they made decisions without me. The hospital kept Emma in a nearby waiting room. She refused to leave. A nurse gave her crackers and juice, trying to distract her, but she didn't touch them. She kept her eyes on the door. Mara paced the floor like she owned the place. She spoke to Adrian in clipped, quiet tones. The staff didn't understand what was happening. To them, we were just another family, waiting out a tense delivery. When the nurse came in to update Adrian, Mara stood beside him like a shadow. "It's a girl," the nurse said. Adrian didn't respond. Mara looked at him. "Well?" she asked. He turned toward the nurse and said it like he was ordering lunch. "Is there a form to surrender her? We've decided not to keep her." The nurse blinked. "I'm sorry?" Mara stepped in. Her doctor said she was unstable before surgery, emotional, depressed. It's not safe for her to raise another baby. There's already a child at home. 2 is enough. Adrian added, "We just want what's best. It's a private matter." Emma heard all of it. She had gotten up to throw something in the trash and paused just outside the doorway when she heard her dad's voice. At first, she didn't understand. Then the words sank in. Her heart pounded in her chest. She backed away slowly and sat in the chair, trying not to cry. Her mom had promised everything would be okay, that they'd be a family, that her sister was coming home. Emma waited until no one was looking, then slipped into the hallway. She peeked through a cracked door and saw the baby alone in a hospital bassinet, tiny, red-faced, wrapped in pink. She stepped into the room. A nurse turned, surprised. "Sweetheart, you can't be in here right now." "That's my sister," Emma said. "Your mommy's still recovering. It's going to be a while before she can hold her." Emma shook her head. "My dad said to give her away." The nurse froze. Emma stepped closer to the baby. "He said my mom didn't want her, but she does. She told me. Her name's Hope." The nurse knelt beside her. "Did your mom say she wanted to give the baby up?" "Number, my mom loves her. She just couldn't say anything because she's sleeping, but I can." In the hallway, Mara asked the charge nurse for discharge paperwork. She used her most polished voice. "We've decided on adoption. My son and I are coordinating with a family already." The nurse frowned. "The mother hasn't signed anything. She will, as soon as she's conscious." "But she isn't conscious." "Exactly. So we're moving things along in the meantime." Back in the nursery, the younger nurse didn't know what to do. Emma wouldn't let go of the bassinet. She was crying now, but her hands stayed firm on the rail. The nurse called for backup. Tina arrived moments later, a senior nurse with more than 20 years of experience. She saw the tears on Emma's face and the desperation in her voice. "Ma'am, please don't let them take her," Emma said. "They're lying." Tina sat down beside her and asked her to tell everything. Emma told her about the hallway conversation, what her dad said, what Mara told the nurse. Tina listened carefully. She excused herself and walked to the front desk. "Put a hold on all discharge forms for room 408, she told the receptionist. "No paperwork gets processed without the mother's signature." She made her way to the ICU and spoke with the doctor overseeing Layla's recovery. She explained what Emma had said, and something about it rang true. The doctor agreed to wait. No forms, no movement, no adoption discussion until Layla woke up. When Adrian came back to ask for updates, Tina met him at the nurse's station. "There's been a delay," she said firmly. "We need direct consent from your wife. No exceptions." Adrian's jaw tightened. "She's unconscious." "Then we wait." Mara was furious. She called someone on her phone and stormed outside. Adrian paced the hallway, trying to hide his frustration. Emma sat beside her sister, singing softly. No one came to take the baby again. For hours, Emma stayed in that chair. When she got tired, she curled up with her arms around the bassinet like a shield. Nurses brought her food, which she barely touched. Tina checked on her every hour. Each time she was still there, still holding the line. By the time the doctor confirmed that Layla would be waking up soon, Emma was half asleep in her chair. Tina gently shook her shoulder. "You should come see your mom," she said. Emma stood, her legs wobbly, and followed her down the hallway. She stepped into the ICU, carrying the baby in her arms. Layla's eyes fluttered open. Her body was sore. Her mind was slow. But when she saw Emma holding Hope, standing tall, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with fire, something inside her broke open. "Mom, I didn't let them take her. She's ours." Emma stood at the foot of my bed, holding Hope in her arms like she was something sacred. Her face was streaked with dried tears, but she looked calm, solid, unshaken, like someone who had already fought the war and won. My chest hurt. Not from the incision, from the truth pressing down on me. I looked at the baby, then back at Emma. "What happened?" I asked, my voice weak and raw. Emma swallowed hard. "Daddy said we weren't keeping her. Grandma told the nurse to give her to someone else, but I didn't let them. I stayed with her. I told the nurses the truth." I could hear the monitors beeping steadily beside me. I could smell the sharp scent of antiseptic and feel the weight of the IV in my arm. But all of that faded behind the fury building in my chest. I tried to sit up straighter. Pain lit through my side, but I gritted my teeth and pushed up until I could take my daughter in both hands. "You protected her," I said. "You protected your sister." Emma nodded. "I told them her name is Hope." My heart broke open. She had done what the adults in her life wouldn't. She had protected someone who couldn't protect herself. And she did it without hesitation. A nurse stepped quietly into the room and gave me a soft smile. "They've been asking about you at the front desk, but we haven't let anything move forward without your say. Your daughter told us everything." "I need to see someone in charge," I said. "A supervisor, hospital administration. I want everything on record." She nodded and left the room. I looked down at the baby, sleeping peacefully against Emma's chest. Her tiny fingers peeked out from the blanket. Her skin was warm and her breathing soft. She was perfect, and she was mine. Emma sat beside me on the bed and gently placed the baby in my arms. It was the first time I held her. Her head fit perfectly in the crook of my elbow. I stared at her, memorizing every detail: her nose, her lashes, the way her fingers curled inward like she was still clinging to the comfort of the womb. My body hurt, but my mind was clear. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't scared. I was angry, and I was done staying quiet. Adrian walked into the room 20 minutes later. Mara followed close behind, arms crossed and face tight. "Good, you're awake," Adrian said, like he had been waiting for an excuse to talk. "There's a couple at the front office. They've already signed preliminary papers. We should just talk through it." I looked at him, holding Hope in my arms. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. Mara cut in. "You were unconscious. You weren't in your right mind. We did what needed to be done. You have another child. You have no money. This was the best decision." "For who?" I asked. "You?" "Him? Certainly not for me. And definitely not for this baby." Adrian stepped closer. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," I said. "I didn't consent to anything. You lied. You tried to erase her like she didn't exist. If Emma hadn't been here, I would have woken up to nothing. You wanted to take her from me because she wasn't the son you pictured. You didn't even give her a name." "I was thinking about what's best for our family," he said, defensive now. "No, you were thinking about control," I said. "You don't get to make that call. Not for me, not for her." The hospital supervisor arrived with 2 nurses. I explained everything. They listened. They documented. They made sure every note and statement was added to my file. I told them I was refusing any form of adoption, surrender, or third-party involvement. I confirmed that no one was allowed to make decisions on my behalf moving forward unless I was fully awake and capable. They asked if I wanted a social worker involved. I said yes. When Adrian tried to interrupt, I told him to leave. He looked stunned, like he couldn't believe I was saying no. Mara opened her mouth, but I stopped her before she could speak. "You don't speak for me. You don't speak for my daughters. I trusted you to be here when I needed help, and you tried to sell off my child like a mistake." "You're emotional," she said. "I'm awake," I replied. "That's what you didn't expect." I turned away from them and held Hope closer. The supervisor escorted them out. The nurses closed the door gently behind them. The room was quiet again. This time it felt safe. Emma climbed into the bed beside me, careful not to bump my stitches. I wrapped one arm around her and the other around Hope. My world had collapsed and rebuilt itself in the span of a day. But what was left, this moment, these girls, was more than enough. "You did good," I whispered to Emma. "You were brave." "I didn't want her to be alone," she said. "She never will be," I promised. Not as long as I had breath in my body. By the next morning, I had signed every document necessary to secure custody and legal protection over both of my daughters. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I asked the hospital to flag any attempt at visitation or contact from Adrian or Mara without my written permission. They agreed. A social worker named Dana met with me before lunch. She listened carefully as I explained everything that had happened: my history with Adrian, his growing distance, the night he told me he wasn't ready for another girl, and the moment Emma stepped between her sister and the people who were supposed to protect them. Dana took notes, but she didn't just listen with her pen. She listened with her eyes. When I finished, she said something simple and powerful: "You are not alone. And what they did was not legal. You have a case." For the first time in months, I believed that I might have a way out, not just emotionally, but safely, with dignity, with something solid to stand on. I called my sister Nora. She lived 2 states away in North Carolina. She answered on the second ring. "I need help," I said. "I'll be there by tonight." She replied, "No questions. Just love." Emma sat on the edge of the hospital bed, playing with Hope's tiny fingers. She whispered little songs to her, songs she had made up on the spot. She had given her sister the name Hope, and she was doing everything in her 9-year-old power to make sure it stuck. Later that day, Adrian came back. He didn't knock. He walked in like nothing had changed, like he still had a place in that room. He looked tired, but not remorseful. He pulled up a chair and stared at me, then at the baby. "So what now?" he asked. I didn't answer. I kept my hand on Hope's back, feeling her slow breaths against my palm. "You can't seriously believe I was trying to hurt you," he said. "We had a plan. This wasn't just me." "Yes, it was," I said. "You could have stopped her. You could have waited until I woke up. You could have asked me what I wanted. Instead, you told the nurse to make my child disappear." He shifted in the chair. I panicked. "No, you planned," I said. "There's a difference." He stood up, frustrated now. "You're going to blow this all up over one decision?" "That one decision told me everything," I replied. "It showed me exactly who you are." He turned toward Emma. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go get something to eat." Emma clutched my arm and shook her head. "I'm staying with Mom." "You're still my daughter, too," he said, his voice sharp. Emma didn't flinch. "You tried to take my sister." Adrian looked at me, and for the first time I saw something crack in his expression. Not sadness, not guilt, just the realization that he had lost control. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "There will be no joint anything. You made your choice." "I won't sign." "You won't have to," I said. "I'll take it to court. I already have a caseworker. The hospital has statements. They're keeping a record. You can fight me if you want, but I won't stop until I know they're both safe." He stood there for a second longer, waiting for me to blink. I didn't. Then he walked out, silent. Mara didn't come back. Nora arrived just before sunset. She walked into the room with a duffel bag, a tray of food, and tears already in her eyes. "Oh my God, Layla," she said, wrapping me in a gentle hug. "I'm okay," I whispered, though I didn't believe it until I saw her face. She turned to Emma and knelt down. "You're the bravest kid I've ever met." Emma smiled, shy for the first time in days. We stayed in the hospital for 2 more nights. The nurses were kind. They brought extra blankets, warm meals, and small gifts for the girls. They treated us like a family, not a broken one, a strong one. Before discharge, the hospital chaplain came by. She asked if I wanted to talk. I said yes. I told her everything, start to finish. When I finished, she said, "You were asleep, but your daughter stayed awake. That's what love looks like." I nodded. "She shouldn't have had to be the one to protect someone," she added, "but thank God she did." We left the hospital in Nora's car. I sat in the back seat with Hope nestled against my chest. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder. I looked out the window at the sun cutting through the trees. Everything felt different. I wasn't heading home. I was heading forward. As we turned onto the highway, Emma looked up at me and said, "You're going to be okay, Mom." I nodded. "So are you." She looked down at Hope and kissed her forehead. "We all are." 2 weeks later, we were living in Nora's guest room. It wasn't spacious, but it was safe. Emma had a mattress on the floor covered in hand-me-down blankets and a few of her drawings taped to the wall. Hope slept in a borrowed bassinet beside my bed. At night, I could hear them both breathing, one deep and steady, the other soft and quick. That sound kept me grounded when I couldn't sleep. I filed for divorce the day after we arrived. Adrian tried to call. I didn't answer. When he finally texted, it was only to ask if I had changed my mind. I responded with one sentence, "Hope is staying with me." He never replied. The hospital provided written documentation of everything. The social worker followed up with a referral for legal aid. I had a lawyer by the end of the week. Every step was painful, but each form, each signature, each affidavit felt like taking back pieces of myself that I had let slip away for too long. Emma started school the following Monday. She wore her favorite yellow hoodie and brought Hope's picture with her in her backpack. At drop-off, she turned to me and said, "I told my teacher about what happened. She said I was very brave." "You were," I said. "You are." At home, Nora helped me rebuild the pieces of my life. She took shifts watching the baby when I needed to rest or shower. She cooked dinner and never asked for anything in return. She reminded me what real support looked like. One night, after putting the girls to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and cried. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't anymore. I cried for the version of me that thought silence was the same thing as peace. I cried for all the moments I had let someone else decide what I was worth. And then I got up, poured a glass of water, and checked on my daughters. Hope stirred in her sleep. I picked her up, held her close, and whispered her name. She settled into me like she belonged there, like she had always known she would make it home. Emma wrote a story for school that week. She titled it, "The Day I Became a Big Sister Forever." Her teacher emailed me to say it was the most moving thing she'd read all year. In the story, Emma described how she stayed in the nursery, how she told the nurses her mom would never want to give Hope away, how she didn't eat or move until someone listened. She ended it with a drawing of 3 girls holding hands. One tall, one small, one in the middle. No fathers, no grandmothers, just the 3 of us. She didn't need to explain who was holding who up. Eventually, I got a job working part-time at a local cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for diapers and groceries, and I could walk there with Hope in a stroller. The owner, a woman named Celeste, offered to let me bring the baby during slow shifts. She said mothers deserved more than second chances. They deserved open doors. The divorce took 6 months. Adrian never contested. He disappeared from our lives as quickly as he'd tried to erase a child from it. In the final hearing, the judge awarded me full custody. Mara didn't show up. I didn't celebrate. I just took a deep breath and went home. Some nights, I still wake up with fear gripping my chest. I remember what it felt like lying unconscious while people I trusted plotted behind my back. But then I see Emma asleep in the next bed, Hope nestled against my chest, and I remember that we're no longer in the hands of people who couldn't love us for who we are. Hope turned 6 months old last week. She laughs when Emma dances. She pulls my hair when I try to sing. She reaches for both of us with equal need. Sometimes I wonder if she remembers, somewhere deep in her bones, that her life nearly began in silence. But it didn't. Because of Emma. When people ask how I got through it, I tell them the truth. I didn't do it alone. My daughter saved her sister. She stood taller than grown men who failed to find courage. She refused to let fear take her voice. She believed in love and loyalty when everyone else turned away. And because of her, I remembered how to believe again too. This story didn't start with strength. It started with fear, betrayal, and a hospital bed I couldn't get out of. But it ends with something else. Not revenge, not bitterness. Something harder, something deeper. It ends with choosing to live, choosing to speak, choosing to protect what no one else will. And it ends with a little girl named Hope, who will grow up knowing exactly how wanted she is. Because her sister said, "She's ours." And I listened. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, share it. Someone out there might need to hear that love, even in its quietest form, can be the loudest force in the room. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done if you were in Emma's shoes or Layla's? I read every single one. And if you believe in the power of family, in the strength of girls who grow up protecting each other, and in the voice that says, "She's ours," even when no one else is listening, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that hits where it matters most. Thank you for watching. And to every Emma out there, thank you for holding the line when others won't.